At the northwestern edge of Newcastle lies Kuragang, a broad, low-lying island set in the estuary of the Hunter River. Since the 1960s, modern industry had dominated much of its southeastern corner, but it wasn't always like this. Once, this was a patchwork of islands: Ash Island, Mosquito Island, and Dempsey Island, to name a few, stitched together over time into the single landmass we now see. The stories of the islands are many, from early pioneers to wartime use. These are just a few of them. Long before the transformation, this was country for the Warramai and Awabakal people, a place of fishing, hunting and gathering along the estuary's shifting edges. That began to change in the early 1800s. On 17 June 1801, William Paterson recorded in his journal an exploration with James Grant. Travelling 5 miles upriver from the fledgling settlement of Coal River, modern-day Newcastle, they were acting on instructions from Governor Philip King to survey the river and assess its resources. It was here they noted what became known as Ash Island, named for the quality timber growing in abundance. Within days, Paterson returned with sawyers, marking out stands of red cedar and gum. The first saw pit was dug, and the work began. In less than 20 years, most of the valuable timber was gone, the cutters pushing further upstream in search of richer groves. In 1829, Alexander Walker Scott was granted 2,560 acres on Ash Island. The prime timber had been stripped, but much of the landscape remains. Raw, fertile and waiting. Some was reserved for the local Aboriginal people to maintain access to land, water and food, though European expansion steadily displaced them. Scott was a man of wide ambition. Born in Bombay in 1800 and educated in England, he already established a substantial home overlooking Newcastle Harbour. A trained medical doctor with a passion for natural history, he set about transforming Ash Island into an extensive farm with the help of convict labour. A cottage and outbuildings rose in the shadow of Norfolk pines and Port Jackson fig, with a jetty reaching into the river's tidal currents. By the 1830s, other settlers had followed suit, with squatters taking up land on nearby islands like Dempsey, drawn by the promise of fertile ground and livelihood. But Scott's ambitions reached far beyond farming. In 1835, he established saltworks at Pirates Point, modern-day Stockton, and on Mosquito Island, supplying Sydney with one of its most essential commodities. He started the first iron foundry also at Stockton, ventured into tobacco production at West Maitland, and owned several coastal trading vessels, the so-called 60-milers, with interest in deep-sea ships. When the Bank of Australia failure hit during the 1840s depression, Scott's fortunes faltered. Assets were sold, including his Newcastle residence in 1848. He relocated to Ash Island with his wife Harriet Colquitt, herself the daughter of an emancipated convict, and his stepdaughter Mary Ann and their 2 daughters Harriet and Helena. There, for a time, life flourished. An orchard took root, producing oranges renowned across the colony. A vineyard spread across the cleared lands. Gardens bloomed, among the finest in the district, fed by fresh water drawn from underground wells. Servants, brought out under assisted immigration schemes, helped sustain the operation. It was, in many ways, a small, self-contained world. And at its heart was curiosity. Scott wrote extensively on entomology, more than 140 articles, with a particular fascination for butterflies. Both he and Harriet were skilled artists, and that passion passed to their daughters, Harriet and Helena. On Ash Island, the sisters found their subjects in abundance. Among dense bush and tangled undergrowth, they searched for insects, climbing, digging, collecting, bringing specimens back to study their life cycles in detail. What they produced was extraordinary. Their illustrations, precise, delicate, almost luminous, captured the transformation of Australian insects with a level of scientific and artistic accuracy that drew international attention. Their work culminated in Australian Lepidoptera and their transformations, a publication as ambitious as it was expensive. Too expensive, as it turned out. The project put immense strain on the family's finances. Around the same time, tragedy struck. Harriet died suddenly of a heart attack. The convict system, on which Scott had long relied for labour, was also coming to an end. Without it, the cost of maintaining the estate became unsustainable. In 1865, Alexander Walker Scott surrendered his debts and left Ash Island, returning to Sydney with his daughters. Their homestead at the island's northwestern point was demolished, its location now known as Scott's Point, and the land was subdivided once more, given over to agriculture and dairy farming. For more on the Scott sisters and their incredible work, follow the link in the video description. What remains here are the ruins of Millum's farmhouse. Built by freeholder William Millum, its sandstone came from Muri Quarry, where Boomerang Park now sits, hauled by bullock dray, then ferried by river to Ash Island. Mortar was made the old way, by burning and crushing oyster and pipi shells, often sourced from Aboriginal middens or dredged from the waterways. Millum is said to have purchased 26 acres of Scott's former estate using money he made in the goldfields. A modest 2-bedroom slab hut came first, with a separate kitchen, but it didn't take long for the family to outgrow it. In its place rose a 2-storey home, a sitting and dining room and 2 bedrooms below, with kitchen, bathroom and laundry at the rear. Upstairs, one smaller and one larger dorm-style bedroom. Inside, cedar and rosewood joinery, cut from trees felled on the island itself. Unlike Scott's homestead, this one has endured, at least in part. Once home to William, his wife Anne, and the 6 kids, it was also the heart of a working dairy. Milking sheds, a well, and scattered fruit trees mark the property. One pear tree still stands today, bearing fruit as it has for generations. A few flowering shrubs linger too, quiet survivors of a once busy homestead. The Millums were the first in the Northern District to adopt a cream separator, and by the 1860s, William Jr. took on much of the work. The farm expanded, more land, more cattle, eventually numbering over 100 head. In those days, the islands played a vital role in feeding Newcastle, its premier milk supplier, plus butter, fruit and vegetables across the growing town. Then came the floods. In 1893, water swept up to 6 feet high across the island, swallowing nearly everything in its path. Of Millum's herd, just 14 cows remained. The rest were carried off into the channel, lost to the current. It was a harsh reminder of the river's relentless power. The farm, by then known as Errington, remained in the family until around 1920. But the land was changing. Floods came more often, wearing it down year by year. The Great Flood of 1955 delivered the final blow. The land was sold to the state and the farmhouse was partially demolished to discourage squatters, a few walls still standing. In its farm days, Ash Island was linked to the mainland by hand-pulled punts at Sandgate and Hexham, with another connecting to Mosquito Island. These crossings were lifelines for a scattered agricultural community. By the late 19th century, more than 50 families lived here, supported by 17 dairies and a public school. Not too far away stands the schoolmaster's house. Built in the mid-1890s, it housed the schoolmasters who taught at Ash Island Public School just 50 metres away. Its double brick walls proved resilient against the floods, and for a time, it was the last building on the island still resting on its original foundations. Restored in 1997, it now serves as a base for the Friends of the Schoolmaster's House, an environmental conservation group. Neighbouring Mosquito Island, home to around 200 people, once had its own school too, along with a post office. In addition to farming, Ash and Mosquito Islands took on another role. A radar station was established on Ash Island, part of a broader network guarding Australia's coastline. Known as Number 131 Radar Station, it operated with a team of almost 50 surveillance personnel. The once camouflaged 1-foot-thick reinforced concrete structures, igloo-shaped and built to British design, housed the equipment, including Canadian ground control interception systems. The site also has remnant concrete footings and a base for an antenna stand. Even the schoolmaster's house was requisitioned by the Royal Australian Air Force during the war. An anti-aircraft battery was also stationed on the eastern end of nearby Mosquito Island, very close to BHP and other industries. By the early 20th century, the islands themselves were beginning to change. Reclamation work slowly filled the narrow channels between them. By the 1960s, heavy industry had taken hold, reshaping the landscape entirely. The separate islands were merged into one, Kuragang. The narrow waterways, swamps and salt marshes separating the islands would have been teeming with life, but industry saw something else, a convenient dumping ground for its slag, refuse and other heavy waste. By the 1970s, growing concern over pollution and environmental decline led to the creation of the Kuragang Nature Reserve. From that came the wetland rehabilitation projects, an effort to restore what had been lost. Industry still takes up what was once Walsh Island, Dempsey and part of Mosquito Island, but the rest is slowly returning to life, with new habitats for its diverse estuary wildlife. Visit Kuragang today and you'll find people fishing, photographing its beautiful bird life and wandering its mangrove pathways. It's a place where layers of history lay quietly beneath the surface. What remains are fragments, but together they tell a story of resilience, loss, and a landscape slowly remembering what it once was.